Imagine waking up one morning to find your newborn baby missing. Not stolen by a stranger, not lost in some tragic accident, but taken by the very people who are supposed to manage your neighborhood. That's exactly what happened to me when my HOA decided that unpaid fees gave them the right to rip my child from my arms. It all started with a ridiculous claim. Apparently, I owed a few $100s in late fees. But instead of sending another notice, instead of calling or working something out, they took the most unthinkable action. They showed up at my home, using their so-called authority, and before I even understood what was happening, my baby was gone, just like that. I fought back with everything I had. I called the police. I confronted the HOA. I demanded answers. But all I got was smug looks and empty threats, until I took them to court. And suddenly, those same people who tore my family apart were the ones panicking, begging for mercy, desperate to undo what they had done. Now, with the truth exposed, the tables have turned. But the question remains, will justice be served, or will the HOA find a way to escape the consequences of their actions? Keep watching, because this story is far from over. I couldn't believe what was happening. One moment, I was rocking my baby to sleep, and the next, my world turned upside down. The HOA had always been a nightmare. Constant fines, threats over small things like the color of my front door or a few weeds in my yard. But I never thought they would go this far. How could they justify taking my child over a few so-called unpaid fees? At first, I thought it was some sick mistake. I called the HOA office, demanding to know where my baby was, but they acted like I was crazy. "Your account is in serious delinquency," one board member told me, like that somehow explained everything. They claimed they were following policy, that I had ignored multiple warnings. But nothing, absolutely nothing, justified what they did. I went straight to the police, thinking they would immediately step in, but even they seemed hesitant. "It's a civil dispute," they told me. An asterisk civil dispute asterisk. How was this not a crime? My child had been taken from me, and yet the people responsible were still sitting comfortably in their gated homes, acting like they had done nothing wrong. That's when I realized I was on my own. If I wanted my baby back, I would have to fight, and I had no idea just how deep this corruption went. I wasn't going to just sit back and let this happen. If the police wouldn't help, I needed to find someone who would. I started digging, researching my rights, talking to lawyers, even reaching out to other homeowners who had issues with the HOA. What I uncovered made my stomach turn. I wasn't the first person they had targeted. There were stories of families being harassed, people losing their homes over minor fees, even cases where the HOA had used legal loopholes to seize property. But nothing as extreme as what they had done to me. Taking a child, that was something entirely different, and yet they acted like it was business as usual. One homeowner, an older man named Greg, told me he had been fighting the HOA for years. "They think they're above the law," he warned. "They have connections. Judges, law enforcement, people who look the other way." His words sent a chill through me. If this went deeper than just a group of power-hungry board members, what chance did I have? But I wasn't backing down. I started gathering every piece of evidence I could find. Emails, letters, payment records, anything to prove they had overstepped. Then, just when I thought I was making progress, something happened that made me realize just how dangerous these people really were. One night, as I was piecing everything together, I noticed something strange. My emails to the HOA, the ones demanding answers, had all been marked as read, but no one had responded. Then I saw it, an anonymous message sitting in my inbox. Asterisk stop digging. "You don't know who you're messing with," asterisk. My heart pounded. Was this a threat? Had they been watching me? I tried to shake it off, but the feeling of being watched only grew stronger. My trash cans had been moved. My mail started going missing. And then my security cameras, ones I had just installed, mysteriously stopped working. That was when I knew this was bigger than I had ever imagined. Desperate, I went back to the police with my new evidence. This time, I found an officer who actually listened. "This isn't just an HOA dispute anymore," he said, flipping through the documents. "This is something else." But before he could say anything more, his phone rang. After answering, his expression changed. "I'm sorry," he said, handing me back my papers. "There's nothing we can do." I was stunned. What had just happened? Who had called him? Every door I knocked on kept slamming shut, but I had one last move left. Court. I was taking them to trial, and if they thought they could silence me, they had no idea who they were dealing with. The day of the court hearing was approaching, and I was ready to expose everything. I had my documents, my witnesses, and a lawyer who believed in my case. But then, just when I thought I had the upper hand, something happened that shook me to my core. I got a call from my lawyer late at night. His voice was tense. "I don't know how to tell you this," he said, "but the judge assigned to your case has close ties to the HOA." My stomach dropped. "What does that mean?" I asked, already fearing the answer. He hesitated before saying, "It means they might try to throw this out before it even begins." I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. The corruption ran deeper than I ever imagined. But before I could even process it, something even worse happened. I got a letter. No name, no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Asterisk, drop the case. This is your final warning, asterisk. That was when I realized just how dangerous this was. This wasn't just about unpaid fees, or even about my baby. This was about power, control, and people who thought they were untouchable. But they made one mistake. They thought I would back down. They had no idea that I was just getting started. The day of the trial finally arrived, and I walked into that courtroom knowing this was my last chance to bring the truth to light. The HOA board members sat smugly on their side, whispering to their expensive lawyer. The judge, the one with ties to the HOA, glanced at me with an expression I couldn't read. I braced myself for the worst. Then, just as the hearing was about to begin, the doors swung open. A man I had never seen before walked in, holding a thick folder. He marched straight to my lawyer and handed him the documents. My lawyer's eyes widened as he flipped through the pages. Then he stood up. "Your Honor," he said, his voice firm, "we have new evidence that changes everything." The courtroom went silent. The judge hesitated before allowing him to proceed. My lawyer held up the papers. "These documents show that the HOA has been illegally seizing property, falsifying records, and most importantly, they had no legal right to take my client's child." Gasps echoed through the room. The HOA's lawyer looked pale. The board members exchanged frantic glances. But the real shock came next. The mysterious man who delivered the documents finally spoke. "I was on the inside," he admitted. "I helped them cover things up. But this was too far." The judge had no choice but to listen. The case took a dramatic turn. The HOA was suddenly on the defensive, scrambling to explain themselves. And then, the best moment of all, an order was given. My baby was to be returned to me immediately. I thought that was the end. I thought justice had been served. But then, as the courtroom emptied, I caught one of the HOA members whispering into their phone. Their face was tight with anger. And just before they left, they turned to me and smiled. "This isn't over." I held my baby in my arms, finally safe, finally home. After everything the HOA had done, after the threats, the corruption, the lies, I had won. But even as I breathed in the relief of that moment, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't truly over. The HOA board members had been exposed. Their illegal actions lay bare in court. Some resigned immediately. Others faced deeper investigations. The whole neighborhood was talking, and for the first time, people weren't afraid to stand up against them. Homeowners started filing their own lawsuits, uncovering years of shady dealings. The power the HOA once held was slipping through their fingers. But that board member's parting words stayed with me. "This isn't over, It made me realize something. I had been fighting just to get my child back, but this was bigger than me. If they could do this to one person, they could do it to someone else. I wasn't going to let that happen. So I kept going. I pushed for reforms, worked with other homeowners, and made sure people knew their rights. The HOA had ruled with fear for too long, and now that fear belonged to them. In the end, they tried to take everything from me, but all they did was make sure I would never stop fighting back.